from PhoneDog.com. And what do you do when two great QWERTY-equipped smartphones come out? You pit them up in a dogfight against each other. That's what. The Samsung Epic 4G, the T-Mobile G2, two of the best QWERTY smartphones on the market right now, and two devices that are utilizing their respective carriers' latest network upgrades. So the Epic 4G is running Android 2.1 with Samsung's TouchWiz user interface, and the G2 is running almost a perfect vanilla version of Android 2.2 out of the box. Now, by the end of the year, the Galaxy S line, including the Epic 4G, will have Android 2.2. But as of now, it's sitting on 2.1 and or Eclair, and the G2 sitting on 2.2 or Froyo. So, a little bit of difference in the hardware. This is definitely for people that want a vanilla Android experience and want the most recent software available. It's all about the G2. That's the one to have. Very stock Android experience you can see there. Now on the Epic 4G and all the other Galaxy S devices, you'll notice that it's more of a iPhone-ish type menu interface with Samsung's TouchWiz. Icons are boxed off, and instead of click that. Icons are boxed off, and instead of scrolling down like you would with the G2, you scroll to the side. So very similar. If you're wondering like, hey, this looks familiar, of course it does. Very similar to the iPhone on that front. So, for people switching from the iPhone or people that like that iPhone-esque menu, definitely an option here with the Epic 4G. If you're looking for a vanilla Android experience, I'd say the G2. Now, it's personal preference here. This is not, when I award it to one or the other, you're going to say, oh, I like a vanilla Android 2.2 or I like TouchWiz. Definitely personal preference. Check both out in the store. As with anything, I say, before you look to buy. But for me personally, between these two, I would have to give it to the G2. I like the vanilla Android experience, but then again, I deal with Android daily, and it depends on who's buying. If I talk to my mother and she wanted a smartphone, or talk to a friend that's a first-time smartphone buyer, I definitely recommend the Epic 4G over the G2 in terms of just menu. This is much easier to navigate out of the box, familiar interface to an extent, and it kind of hides some of the nerdiness, if you will, of Android 2.2 or the challenges that come with a stock version. Very very easy to use. Pretty easy on that front. Now on the G2, it's vanilla Android 2.2, which isn't hard by any means, but just comparing the two, I would have to say that this for first-time smartphone buyers or people that are coming from the iPhone or people that want more of a graphically or aesthetically pleasing menu. This one for people that want the vanilla Android experience and don't want to be bogged down with the manufacturer installed, overlays like Sense UI and TouchWiz and Moto Blur. So, different there. I would give the edge to the G2, but that's not a factor in the final score because it's personal preference. Battery, to jump around a little bit, both batteries are 1500 milliamp batteries. No real difference in terms of battery life. I get about a day of use. With moderate use, I get about a day out of both of these devices before they power down. Now, the interesting thing about the Epic 4G is, at least for me, it takes longer to charge than the other Android devices. I'm that type of person that charges for 15 or 20 minutes, in and out, in between meetings or in between calls. I'll charge for 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'll pull it off the charger. I get a significantly better charge with the G2 than I do with the Epic. It's just a slow charger for whatever reason. It takes a little bit longer, so I'll pull it off of the charger after 15 or 20 minutes, and it's only gone up a couple of percentage points, whereas with this, it's up, let's say 15 or 15 to 20, somewhere in that range. So a little bit faster of a charge on this. So if you're you're an executive or you travel on a regular basis and you do that quick charge thing like I do, the G2 is a little bit better suited for that there. So, jumping back into the processor speeds, 800 megahertz Snapdragon processor, next generation Snapdragon processor on the G2, 1 gigabyte Hummingbird processor on the Epic 4G. Now, while it may sound like the Epic 4G has an edge with the 1 gigahertz processor, this is a next generation Snapdragon processor, so even though it's running at a lower clock speed, kind of like what Intel did where, lower clock speed, better internals on the inside, front side bus, things like that. So it's not what it seems. You're not comparing clock speeds and just clock speeds. Now, in moderate or in daily use, rather, both are extremely fast. I give a slight edge to the G2, at least in daily tasks for me. This thing rarely, if ever, lagged throughout the review, all the reviews that I did. Rarely, if ever, lagged. Very fast, very quick. easy to use. And definitely, the G2 is as well, don't get me wrong, but I noticed a couple of times when opening certain things or when doing certain tasks on the device, it was just a little bit slower, and every now and again it would hang for 1 or 2 seconds. So, not a huge issue. I wouldn't, 1 or 2 seconds is enough for me to say, hey, it's not a big deal. 1 or 2 seconds occasionally, rather. But slight edge to the G2 in terms of, quick speeds. Now, again, this is an almost perfect vanilla version of Android 2.2, which typically runs faster anyway, and it's vanilla versus 2.1, which has Samsung's TouchWiz user interface installed. So, more like apples to oranges in terms of, this is coming out of the gate with a fast processor, but it does have some overlay stuff that slows it down a little bit. So, but in terms of processor speeds, edge to the G2 on that front. Now, let's do a quadrant standard test. I downloaded quadrant standard from the Android market, and we'll do a test just to give you an idea of speeds on that front. Let's see, run full benchmark there. So we'll do those, and then after that we'll take a look at the try to get these in my hand there. We'll do a look at, or take a look rather, at the speeds. Both of these devices support the respective carrier's latest network enhancements: 4G or WiMAX for Sprint, and HSPA Plus, which is really enhanced 3G, but they're calling it 4G-like speeds there. So both are supposed to support that. So we'll take a look at the speeds. Good coverage here with both. There's a cell site right outside of my office, so we're getting as accurate as it can be in terms of speeds. So we'll take a look at that. Well, it's a pretty planet. Alrighty, let's see here. It'll be interesting to see what the speeds are. Now again, Android 2.2 by default runs faster. I ran this test on the Droid X with 2.1, and when I installed 2.2, much faster, or much, I saw an improvement there. So this device, the Epic 4G, 954 in terms of the test, and on the T-Mobile G2, 1587. So you can see, a pretty significant change there in terms of graphics, in terms of overall performance. On that front. Now, in day-to-day tasks, you're probably not going to see this at all. I saw a little bit of lag on the Epic 4G, but not too much. That just backs up the claim, and makes me want to hand it to the G2 in terms of overall speed. But again, not a big deal in day-to-day use. Consumers likely, won't notice this when they're doing text messages or in the Android market. You won't notice the speed differences there. So let's have a look at the network speeds. Let's enable 4G on this device, and HSPA Plus is supposedly enabled out of the box. But there's some concern that even HSPA Plus markets aren't seeing HSPA Plus speed. So it'll be an interesting little test here, and we'll do a couple of tests just to make sure it's accurate. Let's go jump down into speed test. It's real life testing, phone dog style. And let's get the GPS lock. Excuse me. Get the GPS lock here, and wait for those servers to update, because we want to get the most accurate servers possible on that front. And let's get 4G activated. Come on. Okay, so now we're on Charlotte, North Carolina for both of these devices. Let's hit begin test, and we'll have a look on 4G or WiMAX on Sprint, HSPA Plus, or enhanced 3G, 4G-like speeds, whatever you want to call it, on T-Mobile. So 2190 kilobits per second, 1946 kilobits per second on Sprint. And I am running 4G, as you can see, so those are 4G speeds. And 1085 kilobits per second on the upload, 496 kilobits per second on the upload with the T-Mobile G2. So T-Mobile G2 wins the download, Epic 4G wins the upload speed. Let's test that again. And we'll do 3 tests and kind of get an accurate number, or a average number there. Let's see. It looks like the Epic might win this battle. 1,685 kilobits per second. Now, it's interesting to notice for 4G and for HSPA Plus, these numbers are incredibly bad. I would expect to see 4 to 6 megabits per second on the Epic 4G, and same thing with HSPA Plus. Both of these have theoretical speeds that are much faster than this. These are like 3G speeds. So there you have it, Epic 4G versus T-Mobile G2 Dogfight. This was a tough one for me because I love both of these devices, and really, if you're on one of these carriers, Sprint or T-Mobile, if you're on Sprint, stick with the Epic 4G. If you're on T-Mobile, stick with the G2. Both are just fantastic devices. I've been on a keyboard kick lately. Both are fantastic, or both have fantastic keyboards. In terms of a dogfight score, I have to give just a slight edge to the G2. In terms of vanilla Android experience, the data speeds were absolutely terrible. We're bad on both, but worse on the G2 on that front. So a little bit of an edge to the G2. Don't get me wrong, both are fantastic devices. And if I was on Sprint, I'd go with the Epic 4G. Or just between these two. If I was on Sprint, I'd go with the Epic 4G. And if I was on T-Mobile, I would go with the G2. So tough call there. Slight edge to the G2, but both are fantastic devices. And if you get one of these, you really can't go wrong. I think you'll be happy with either one. Much more coverage to come on the T-Mobile G2 and the Samsung Epic 4G on PhoneDog.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/PhoneDog, and hit me up on Twitter with any questions you have about these devices. You disagree with me, you think I'm crazy, the Epic 4G wins by a landslide, or the G2 wins by a landslide. Let me know. PhoneDog_Aaron, and I'll be happy to do my best to respond to those questions, and we'll see what happens from there. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.